I think there is more to the topic of feminism than most people realize. The pop culture idea seems to be that there was a male-dominated society, and then some women fought for equal rights, got them, and then proceeded to go completely insane. Well, that's not entirely accurate. I noticed feminism seems to draw a lot of hate based on stereotyping and guilt by association. I was having a discussion about that with a YouTuber called Metal Mannequin. That's when I decided that I should do a video. I am sure you are all familiar with people like Nuclear Knight and Girl on Film 1969. That is what people associate with feminism. That is unfortunate, as those two are living dinosaurs, spouting off 30-year-old rhetoric from the end of what some would call the second wave of feminism. I will touch on that more later. There is a third wave of feminism, which I usually call modern feminism. It is a very rational, humanist sort of ideology that I am in total agreement with. I will explain more about that later. First, I want to talk about gender roles. I think gender roles are illogical and oppressive. That includes both male and female gender roles. My view is that if there isn't a biological basis for something with actual scientific evidence, it should be dismissed as a social construct. Some of these roles are forced on people in obvious ways, and some aren't so obvious. I am sure we can easily see how the male-dominated society oppressed women with their assigned roles, where they were expected to know their place and had no business doing anything but being a baby factory and taking care of the house. We can also see how many of the old-school feminists, the second-wave throwbacks, seek to brand all men as oppressors and even rapists. There are lots of anti-feminist videos about that. The backlash has been going on for years, so that is obvious too. What isn't obvious is that the male-dominated society was oppressing itself, enforcing roles on women at the same time enforced different roles on men. A man had an obligation to be a provider, had to be in total control of emotion, tough and stoic. It was acceptable to be an absentee father, or at least an excuse to be less of a father than one would otherwise be. We had an expected role when interacting with women, and many other self-imposed roles as well. What isn't obvious with the second wave throwbacks is that they are just as oppressive to women as to men. Much like the male-dominated society of the past, they set out a role for women. It's one that's not to be questioned either. Women who deviate from these roles are shunned and treated with contempt. In that world, you have to be a workaholic career woman. You have to emulate many of the roles men oppressed themselves with in the past. You can't just be a homemaker, and you certainly can't be a porn star or a stripper. Not in the fascist world of the second wave. So does this mean equality is here and we are in a post-feminist world? Hardly. There is still a bit of inequality left, and we have the completely contrived gender roles laid out for both men and women. This brings me back to modern feminism, what some might call the third wave. Unlike the obsolete feminism variant, which dealt only with the concerns of well-to-do white women, the modern version takes minorities and the poor into consideration, as well as assigned male gender roles. There is none of this pre-sex war, anti-porn bullshit you hear from people like Nuclear Knight either. Modern feminism features sex positivity. This embraces sexuality rather than villainizing it in the case of men or denying it in the case of women, as was the case with old-school feminism. It keeps rape defined in a logical way, rather than calling all men rapists, as Girl on Film 1969, aka Dirty Diana, does. It's very much like humanism, just with a focus on women's rights. It is a rationalist position. It's something we should all support, just like we support other rights movements. We wouldn't stereotype black civil rights activists as Black Panthers and dismiss them on those grounds, so we shouldn't make all feminists out to be these man-hating throwbacks. Those type of feminists are a dying breed. Dirty Diana opines that there are so few feminists on YouTube now. Well, it's simply because she doesn't recognize the point of view of the younger generation of women. We are all very much behind the gay rights movement, too, as part of a humanist philosophy. Modern feminism is no different. They don't have anywhere near as far to go, but it's still an equal rights issue. It's something that will continue until we eliminate the gender roles society forces on both men and women. This is also part of modern feminism. It's the position of equal rights in eliminating irrational and seemingly arbitrary gender roles that make it the rationalist position to hold. Whereas old school feminism and the old patriarchal society are irrational as they seek to enforce different gender roles. I don't want to dig into more specific issues, as that would drag this video on far too long. I really just wanted to show that there is more to feminism than many people realize. A rationalist such as myself is likely to find total agreement with the younger generation of feminists. Modern feminism seeks to take back negative words such as bitch and cunt rather than censor them. In this same way, it seeks to reclaim the word feminist from the negative connotations it has accumulated. The word feminist does seem to imply being female, but it really just means a supporter of women's rights. So in that way, I would technically be a feminist, as would probably any other humanist as well. I support women's reproductive rights, a social acceptance of ignoring any and all gender roles, public breastfeeding, and much more. I also support equal pay and promotion opportunities, provided you compare people with identical work experience, qualifications, and work performance, as well as putting in an equal amount of time and effort at the office. People will often cite the way men are discriminated against when complaining about feminism. However, those instances are normally a result of the gender roles. In divorce, for example, the man's role as the aggressor, the provider, and having less emotional needs, coupled with the woman's role of being helpless, needing a provider, and being tasked with caring for children, results in the bias frequently seen in these cases. Being empowered has nothing to do with the path you take in life. It's that you are taking the path that you want to take. Taking on what is dictated to you is not empowerment, no matter how much it is considered to be so by others. What people think your life choices say about your empowerment are meaningless when you are choosing your own path. Freedom of choice is empowerment. If a woman wants to be empowered, she need only ask herself what she wants to do. For both of these questions have the same answer, and only the latter can answer the former. This concept really works for both sexes. It's what being human is all about. This is my take on what modern feminism is, why it's part of humanism, and why it has a basis in rationalism.